Okay.
Hi everyone, it's Billy here again from 47 Wolves, All I Am. Hope you're all well and thank you very much for joining us today. I'm really excited again to welcome back Martin Annette from Arcanum Vita. Hopefully if you've listened to Martin before, you know his background, but thank you very much for joining me again today, Martin. Super excited about today's
Yeah.
conversations.
Oh yeah, fully Billy. Thanks for having us. Good to be back. Yeah, it's a oh gosh, heading into April. Goodness me, like it's a big month, astrologically speaking. Like it's kind of, if there is a high point to the year, from an astrological perspective, it's going to be April. Yeah, there's a fair bit going on. But yeah, thanks for having us back again. And
Oh, yeah,
yeah, like yeah,
very
I'm glad
welcome.
to see what you're doing, and it's all sounding great.
Yep, excellent, excellent. Well, we might kick off with, as you talk about April, with the new moon coming up, going into Aries, which is obviously the start of the new astrological year. But then also timing wise, you've got the solar eclipse happening as well. So yeah, if you want to kick off a little
Yeah,
bit about
fully.
that, yeah, yep.
Only. Well, that's I guess yeah. There is, as I was saying, that there's quite a bit of action in April. It's like when you sort of individually, there's a number of things happening that if you piece them all together, it points to a bigger process as well. Like so, April's not just energetically quite large. There's this, I don't know, there's a, from a process point of view, there's a few things all happening at once that kind of lead it to be a bit of a, I guess, yeah, a merging of energies or a coming together like a wheel turning, so to speak. But yeah, first of all, I guess the first big thing is that we're heading into Aries. Like the sun's now into Aries. The new moon, which is an eclipse, is coming up on the 9th of April. That's a full solar eclipse, but that's also the new moon in Aries. Aries is basically, from an astro point of view, it's the beginning of the year. It's like it's New Year's Day kind of thing when the sun moves into Aries, and it kind of gets initiated as well with the new moon in Aries. But Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and it's the I am kind of, it's the initiating impulse. It's the beginning. I suppose, having had just come through Easter, like Easter in a way signifies, from a northern hemisphere point of view, that's the old sort of, I guess, pagan celebration or ceremony traditional around the beginning of spring. So like Easter is technically, it changes every year, but Easter's the first full moon, or set around the first full moon of from the equinox, from the March vernal equinox or the spring equinox. So like, we've just had our equinox, and if we were in the northern hemisphere, we'd be heading into spring. But being in the south, we're heading into autumn. So it's sort of, it's a bit mixed messages in that way. But essentially, it's the beginning. It's the beginning or the return of life, from the old ways, based on a northern hemisphere tradition. But yeah, essentially, Aries, the sign of Aries, is associated with, and it does, I think it applies to both north and south as well. But it's where, yeah, where life reinitiates or reburgeons or comes out again, and restarts for the year. Like, just to dwell a little bit on Easter, like it's interesting if you look into the symbolism behind it. It's where we have the death and the resurrection from a Christian point of view, but then if we go back into pagan tradition, there was the goddess Airstray, which is weird that the names kind of coincide, but like Airstray was, which is where they got the word estrogen from. She was the goddess of fertility and nature and spring and life and all those types of things. And so, the bunny and the egg and all those are symbols of fertility. And so like Easter essentially was a fertility rite or a fertility celebration, around the emergence of new life or resurrection from the darkness, coming forward into the birth of spring. So like, we've got this lovely initiating energy abounding, after that full moon from the equinox, which leads into Aries essentially. So that, from a seasonal point of view, we've got that rebirth happening now. So this is essentially, cut a long story short, this is astrological new year for the natural year.
And
Yeah,
from what I've read, Martin, you've got your Native American tribes. You've got historically, you've got ancient cultures all around the world that this they used to work on the 13 lunar cycles, so not 12 months. They had sort of essentially 13 cycles, and
that's
yeah,
right.
from all my readings, they all seem to be pretty consistent. That this time of the year, it was to them the start of the new year. And I read, I don't
Absolutely.
know, and it was only briefly this morning that I think it was the French that decided at some stage, I can't remember the time frame, but it was a long time ago now, but they brought it back to January 1st. And that's where the April Fools, which we're recording this on the 1st of April, that came from.
Yeah.
That they changed it, and anyone that wanted to stay with the old way were mocked and ridiculed, and they were
Wow.
essentially called April Fool people, because
Wow.
the powers that be
That's
wanted to change
fascinating.
it for whatever motives they had at the time. Yeah, so
Yeah, right. That's really fascinating. Yeah, wow. Thanks, Billy. Yeah, I haven't heard that. I'll check that out for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, I've
Because
got to
yeah,
do more
I've
reading, so
often
don't quote me
wondered.
on it. But yeah, it was
No,
just
no,
what I
no.
was
But that
reading.
makes
Yeah,
makes total sense. Makes total sense. Yeah, because and you're right too. Like it does line up with all sort of traditional systems tend to have this. Any kind of when I say traditional too, because if you look at the word pagan, one might associate pagan with kind of barbarism or something like that. Like as oh they're pagans. They're this and that. But I think essentially the word pagan literally refers to those that are of the land or commonly associated with an agricultural lifestyle. So like a bit different to Wicca, but like pagan is essentially a farming community or of a farming or a rural lifestyle. So a pagan observation, whether it be a traditional North American Indian or Celtic or whatever, they essentially relied on nature and the seasons to feed themselves and survive. So when we have these pagan rites or these pagan observations, essentially we're just talking about where the sun is in relation to the moon or where the seasons are, and that essentially Easter kind of meant it was going to start getting warmer again, and the deathly cold or the deprivations of winter were sort of coming to an end, and new life force was coming about, and so I suppose they ascribed them to various deities and they ascribed them to various gods. But like essentially, it was a recognition of how nature was working, and we're heading. Aries always kind of impelled this drive. You know, let's get going, let's get it happening, let's get it out there because spring's underway. We're off and running. And yeah, but so there is that. I find that fascinating, and I don't think it's by accident that all these traditional cultures, in some way, have these similarities because they all talk about the return of the seasons. Like it's the natural year going around again, and so with that too comes that promise and that impulse and all those types of things. It comes forward, and for that reason, yeah, Aries is seen as and can be recognized as a beginning. Like, and I suppose just to digress very slightly, it's like, oh, you might ask, like, oh, well, why is the northern hemisphere okay? It is getting warmer in the north, and we're getting colder here. But like, I did ponder that, and I was talking to someone once, and it's essentially that if you look at the flow of energy through the planet, someone there is this understanding that sort of flows in through the North Pole and then comes down through the south and then radiates back out
the
again.
Taurus. Yeah.
So in a sense, we are still operating under the same energetic process as the north, but our orientation to it is different. Like we're more sort of releasing and expelling that experience rather than taking on and initiating the experience. But essentially, it's still very Aries energy, just from a South Pole point of view versus a North Pole point of view, because we're on the same planet, and things don't necessarily change too much. It's really only the direction of magnetic flow that changes with the equator. So yeah, but we're still in the same vibe essentially, but it just might be our experience of it might be from a cooler contractive point of view. Because yeah, and I mean, just another little thing too, from my point of view, summer here, like I don't want to go anywhere in summer here. To me, summer's the end of the garden for me. Like going out into the garden in summer is probably what the northern hemisphere would experience in the dead of winter. Because I don't want to be in that blazing, hot, high heat. And to me, this is when I start gardening again. So like, you get autumn's here now, and we'll get back out into the garden, and it's cooler and it's more functional and it's more operative, and you get your winter greens in, and it's things are going to grow and not perish in the sun.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's yeah,
fascinating.
it's,
Yeah.
it's good like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it is good
what
like that.
energetically or even astrologically, what we're shifting from Pisces, which you talked about in our one of our other videos, that and moving into areas. What's the significant shifts there?
Yeah, well, it is if you think of it from a sort of philosophical point of view, like Pisces is like a unifying principle. Like it's sort of if you think of I don't know, I suppose the collective unconscious or the collective ocean of everything, and I suppose in the beginning there was nothing, and there was just the waters, and from the waters came creation. So like it's this unified divine field that is Pisces, so like it's I suppose you could call it the divine, or it's what we all ultimately will end up back immersed in, or it's from which ultimately we emerge from. But it's a formless sort of divine energy of unity, if you like, and but it's from Pisces where we have our intuition. It's that sort of that collective sort of place of communication and compassion and understanding. It's the merger, it's the merged energy. Whereas Aries is where we are born, like it's where we leave the oceanic everythingness of all togetherness and we emerge as I am. And so like our individuality or our sense of self or who we are as individuals, like that ego or that sense of self is an Aries concept, and I suppose Aries is the god of war, the act of smoting smoting down the unjust and those types of things. But Mars rules Aries, and Mars is the act of not only action and doing and driving forward. It's the force of action. It animates our solar principle. So our identity or our sense of self that is animated by the I am. So we think, therefore we are. Like so. In that way, Mars is that separating field. So Mars separates us from everythingness, and so and in a day-to-day context, our Aries energy is what sets us apart. It's like you're Billy and I'm Martin. And so in that understanding, there's an act of Aryan Martian kind of definition, because I'm me here, and it's my Mars that makes sure that I'm not you, and you're you, and it's your Martian field that makes sure that we're not, that you're you. So like it sort of it separates us, and in many ways Mars is linked to assertiveness, or in many ways the ability to say no. And so like as we emerge from Pisces, we become something, and we start to clearly be that thing. And then with that too, we comes the right to say no to whatever we're not. And that then sets us off on the process of existence or manifestation, which is ultimately then, if you look at the zodiac, that takes us then into Taurus, which is where things manifest. Or in Aries we emerge, but in Taurus we arrive. Like, or we actually start to crystallize. Or start to take a form. And it's not literally a form, but it's a form in the sense of of a conceptual form, a belief in form, a belief of what we are. And I suppose that's that Venus energy of value and worth. So we're only as good as our state of value or worth. But it starts in Aries. It begins in Aries, and Aries is a kind of it doesn't. It's often accused as being a bit mindless, in the sense that it doesn't know where it's going. It's just going. It's just going
It's
out there.
moving
It's
forward.
like
Yep, yep.
it's beginning. Yeah, that's it. So it's that impulse to be, but it hasn't yet really formed itself. So from a natural point of view too, like it's warmer, we're ready to hit the garden, we're ready to do it, we're ready to get out there. And that's the energy. The energy's right, let's just do it. We don't know exactly how it's going to turn out yet. We don't know where it's going, but we know we want to do it, and we know we want to get out there and hook into it. And so that's essentially the spirit of Aries, is that beginning. And if it wasn't for Aries, we'd stay totally undifferentiated in the field of Pisces,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and I suppose that journey is dependent on the initiating principle.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does sound significant, the shift from Pisces to Aries for everything that you've
Oh,
just said.
it,
Is
it
it
is.
very
Yeah.
similar, or I guess the amplified version? We talked previously about the new moon, and that 3 or 4 days before the new moon, that balsamic period of resetting and reflection. Is it similar, and on a bigger scale, given that we're going from obviously Pisces to Aries, but starting the new, not the new moon, but the new astrological year? Is that sort of tied in there?
Yeah. It is, yeah. It is. If you think of it from a celebrate like a symbolic point of view, like the ending of Pisces is the actual, the process of death of the old year or the old form. And so, very beautifully symbolized in in the story of, say, Easter, for argument's sake. There is the death, there's the ending. And it's interesting that, Pisces is associated with Christ and the redemption principle and those types of things as well, where it's this sacrifice or this ending or this death, that has this period of quiescence and darkness, so to speak. And then it's from there that the resurrection or the beginning comes through. So, essentially saying with the moon as well, like in the last phase of the moon, which is the 12th house of the zodiac, which is Pisces, like it's that last, and there's all these beautiful symbolic correlations of 12 and all these types of things, but like it's in that last 12th hour, if you like, that the death takes place, but also the coming together and the respecting and the offering up and all those types of things. It's that real sort of connection with the divine, so to speak, from which we can emerge into rebirth. And so, like, it is that in all manner of symbolism, it's the last stage, which kind of done correctly and done appropriately gives way to a recommencing. But part of that, very key to that, is the death of the old. And like that's the thing. We don't carry it, we're only meant to carry the good bits in with us into the resurrection, the highest the highest forms, the most exalted forms of that last cycle get to carry, we carry those in with us. So while it is a re-beginning, it's imperative through Pisces and through Easter or through this last transition into Aries that we actually release and let go, which is, I don't know, this is what makes this year particularly fascinating, in the sense that right on this new moon, this year we get an eclipse. So not only are we getting a new Aries moon, but we're getting this eclipse, like, and it's a real separation, like it's a real new beginning in things, like in the old world, so to speak, like the old, not just the annual round of things, but like this is a new beginning of a longer, larger cycle in itself, which is, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like you've heard that, you know about yeah, you've heard all you've heard talkings about it, Billy. Is that right?
Yeah, well,
Like,
that's right. A lot, lot
yeah,
of, lot of
yeah,
yeah, a lot of talk out there in astrology and energies, and that talking about how significant April and then this year and moving forward is going to be.
yeah,
And you're right, Martin. It's I think we'll dabble in it a little bit later, but the choice that people have now, it's a real time to, like you said, let go of the past and learn from our past. So yeah, take the learnings from that and in our steps moving forward, as
yeah,
opposed
absolutely.
to holding on to anything that doesn't, no longer serves us.
That's right.
Because
Yeah,
there's no benefit to that, and but we have a choice. We can either hold on and
yeah,
carry all that baggage in with us to the new phase that we're going through, or we can just let go, be a lot lighter, and take all the
yep,
positives, so to speak, to moving forward.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, totally. Well, it's when we look at it too, like if you look at it from an Aries point of view, like, when we think of what an eclipse is, like like from a physical, literal point of view, like we've got this, the moon and the earth and the sun. When from the earth, if we look at the path of the sun each day, it goes along a line that we call the ecliptic. So like when that ecliptic, or it's along that line of the ecliptic that the moon forms its nodes, if you like, or the orbit of the moon forms this special relationship to the line of the ecliptic, and that's what we call the nodal axis, or the moon's nodal axis in relation to the earth and the sun, so to speak. And so when we get a new moon or a full moon that's aligned with that nodal axis, and which ultimately brings it into the path of the sun, that's when we get an eclipse. So like, and that nodal axis goes through 19-year kind of cycle, if you like, or about 18 years, 11 months and whatever. But like, so at the moment, if we look at it, about every 18 months, the nodal axis of the world shifts through the zodiac. And so, since I don't know, I think it was July last year, July 2023, we moved the nodal axis of the moon moved into the axis of Libra or Aries and Libra. So and usually what the nodal axis talks about or how we feel it, it's the collective experience or the collective unconscious, if you like. So what we as a human collective mind, if you like, the way we experience the cosmology or the energy of the planets is, some say, is directed to us through this nodal axis or through the moon's, alignment with the Earth. So, in a way, the nodal axis colors our collective experience of the cosmos, so to speak. I know it's a pretty heavy concept. Like, bear with me, but like it's sort of, in a way, whatever is being put together out in the cosmos, if you like, arrives to us or comes through us to us in a way that's delivered via the moon, energetically speaking, that then resonates either directly through us or through into the earth to be reoperated by us out into the world. So essentially, it's, from a electromagnetic point of view, it's the transmitter, the aerial on the radio that picks up the signals that we operate in our radio of our mind, so to speak. But like, in a way, so cut a long story short, since July last year, that axis has been aligned to Aries and Libra. And now, just in a very simple speak, Aries is I am, and Libra is the opposite of that, which is seventh house in astrology, but that's our relationship to others. So like, since July last year, it moved out of Taurus Scorpio into Aries Libra. So really, on a very fundamental level, we've had this real focus, if you like, or energetic focus around Mars and Venus energies, or ourself and other. I mean, you can look at it on a more collective level. Mars rules war and Libra rules justice. So like, like, if you look at the world, like, is the wars going on, are they just? Like, is action fair? Like what are the so it's this real realization around force of action and harmony and equilibrium. Like, like, what's the balance here? Like, what's the right way to act? But at the same time, North Node talks about what we should be doing more of versus the South Node, which is what we're meant to be moving away from in order to improve it. So like, in many ways too, Aries is trying to get us to be a little bit more assertive of ourselves, not warring, but assertive. Like, I mean, we could say, all this injustice, all this action that's taking on in the world is unjust, but like, at some point, that's the attitude, or that's the approach. If we were standing in this Libran dynamic of trying to make everyone feel cool, the real call here is to go, no, that's not cool, or I'm not going to align with that. I'm going to actually take my own position based on what I see as fair. And so like, there's a call to act in the face of unfair action. So like, it's that type of dynamic that's playing out. But like, I suppose, yeah, what that sort of means is that, yes, as we are in this axis, we're going to have these eclipses along this axis of either Aries or Libra, or very close to Aries or Libran signs or moons or planets, along the next 18 months since July last year. So this one in particular is actually right on that nodal axis. It's going to take place on the 9th of April, pretty much 4 degrees away from the nodal axis. So that makes it quite a total eclipse, because the actual moon, as we get a new moon, the moon and the Earth are going to line up pretty closely along the line of the sun, and it's going to black out the sun, because it's right on that ecliptic line that lines up with the sun. So and there you see the eclipses. We get new moons and full moons all throughout the year, but wherever that nodal axis is, when you get a new moon that's in that sign or near that axis, it becomes an eclipse, whether it be a lunar one or a solar one, depending on whether the Earth's in front of the moon or the moon is in front of the Earth. Like, but essentially, they're times of incredible reset, if you like, because for that moment, the flow or the continuum of energy that maintains I don't know how would we put it, the Cosmo Earth grid or the Cosmo Earth connection is temporarily disrupted, so that an equilibrium gets met and then it gets rebooted. So it's like a moment of reboot on some level. And it's coming up, and there's a big one in Aries, yeah, on the 9th of April. And it's an interesting one too. Like, just when you look at the symbols involved, it's kind of, it kicks a bit of butt. Like, there's this real feature around change and transformation in it. Like, it's funny. Like, if you look at a chart, all the planets, normally the planets are scattered all over a chart, but this time the planets are all in this big long line, so to speak. Like, it starts at Pluto on one end and Uranus on the other end, and they call that like a train chart. And basically, in a chart like that, you basically, they reckon, the two most important planets are the one at the beginning and the one at the end. And in this eclipse, at the moment of the eclipse, Uranus, which is change, and Pluto, which is transformation, are at the beginning and the end of this big stellium of planets. So, like, it's in Aries, which is, action or assertiveness, or taking a new step or a new beginning. So, like, the doomsayers might say, wow, this is a cataclysmic event. Like, this is, Aries, is often associated with war, and Pluto is often associated with destruction leading to re-beginnings, and Uranus is often associated with sudden unpredictable events which lead to a completely unforeseen outcome that we couldn't see happening. So, like, on one level, there is this cataclysmic potential, but on another level, there's an enormous potential, and it depends how you orientate yourself to it. There's this enormous potential to recommence from the ending of something, and it's exciting in a way because Uranus is figuring strongly in it. And the thing about Uranus is that all the best intentions and all the best predictions in the world can't predict Uranus, because that's the whole nature of Uranian activity, is that we just don't know what it's going to look like. We just don't know where what it's going to be like, because it's unforeseen. Like, if we think it's going to be A, B, and C, we can have the best possible scientific method of arriving at A, B, and C, but as far as getting it or guessing it, I think by virtue of Uranus being there, regardless of what we picked, it would be slightly different. And that's the whole thing about it. So it's that, in a way, there's a bit of excitement there around this unpredictability around it. But cut a long story short, Uranus, either way, whatever happens, is ultimately to bring us to a greater state of awareness or a greater state of understanding in relation to something. And it's to break the old mold and to bring in an upgrade of some kind of a higher nature. So, and it's in Taurus. And so Taurus is material, it's earthly. Taurus rules things like currencies and money and finances and borders and countries and things like that. So it's a real world energy. Like, it could be said that something may take place in the real world that's going to change the way we look at things or change the way we see things, to do with how we see things and what we give value to them. As what's important to us, basically, like what is of importance in that way. So, yeah, it's an interesting chart that has a spark in it. This eclipse brings an interesting spark of change. Yeah, which, yeah, like, yeah, I don't know. Can you feel that coming?
Yeah,
Really?
absolutely, and
Yeah.
I love all that, Martin, and I love the fact that it does feel significant. Like, astrology aside, is I tap into my own intuition and energy, and people out there with even religions, and there's so many different aspects of life, from various backgrounds and perspectives, but ultimately they're pretty consistent with what people are saying or feeling, that we are moving into this significant period of change, And like you say, Aries is probably predominantly known for war and it is action, but it doesn't necessarily have to go down that path, does it? Like this major shift that we're
No,
going
not as
through, if we're coming from a heart space and we're coming from a place of compassion and understanding, then we can move forward. And as you say, not just sit back and go, oh, okay, well, let's just watch this unfold. No, take action, but it doesn't have to be forcible. It doesn't have to be aggressive or warlike. It can be
That's right.
a position of strength, but coming from a heart space as opposed to ego and the battle and the
That's right.
fighting. Would that be fair?
Exactly, and I think that's the key there too, Billy. Like it is, it's interesting. It's how we approach the energies. I think what I found from an astrological point of view, astrology doesn't say this is what's going to happen. Like that's a very medieval perspective. Like oh wow, this is going on, therefore that's going to happen. Like astrology, really, in its highest expression, if you look at the energetics involved, it really it's a tool which we can refine our philosophy, or it's a tool where we can refine our approach. And so, like in many ways, it's not what's going to happen to us. It's the energy that we're all going to be in. And so, therefore, how do we approach that? How do we act? How do we align ourselves to that energy? And because we're not recipients of it, like we're actually participants in it. Like this is the key. And all too often we get hoodwinked into thinking that we're recipients, oh, I can't do anything about that, or this is my lot, or this is the way it is. And in some cases, we're confined by, certain situational parameters and things like that, which we must, evolve out of or work through. But generally speaking, on an individual level, we're not in any way compelled to participate in accordance with the collective level. Like, therein lies that individuating urge of Aries, like this is me versus whatever else is going on, but this is still my right to be me. And like, what I find really interesting about this eclipse is that, just to mention too, Aries, for argument's sake, Aries was the god of war, and he was, the agent of destruction in that way. He wielded the flaming sword and all that type of thing. But his thing wasn't destruction. Like he was all about justice. He was all about defending what's right. And so, in a way, the act of Martian assertiveness is in a way standing by our values, by standing next to what we hold important. And so, that's the key here. It's not that we have to confront this aggressive energy. All we really have to do is simply um, you know validate our beliefs and what we hold true and what we hold strong, and in a way say no to anything that's other than that. And so, in a way, that doing that is actually the call to be co-creator in the energy rather than literally subject to the energy. It's a very, very sort of
I,
interesting distinction to make.
I put it this way too, Martin, and I love what you just said there. It feels to me like there's, with everything that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years, and we all know what we're talking about there, it seems to me now we're coming out of that, or partially anyway, or potentially, that it's almost like a global invitation. Those words just came to me as you were talking then. Astrologically and the universe, the God, whichever, whatever creates, the creator, the source. It seems to be a global invitation for all of us to take stock, to reflect on what we've done in the past as individuals, but as globally around the world. And it feels like, and it is starting to happen, I've noticed, and I don't watch the news per se, but there seems to be a lot happening where people are rising up and sort of not necessarily just lying down and saying to the governments what etc. without getting too much into that. Okay, well this is your decision. We'll just take it. Particularly in Europe and other places that have seen different aspects of from their grandparents, literally in this lifetime. They're going, no, hang on, we're going to rise up. This is not right, and that's that justice you were talking about. But they, from what I've observed, and I'm not living over there obviously, but a lot of the protest and a lot of the uprising seems to be in a loving, united, really compassionate perspective. They're not fighting the government. There's no internal sort of wars or civil wars breaking out. It seems to be happening in a really strong developments, but in a,
Oh,
if I can say, a loving, compassionate way, a peaceful manner. Yeah.
that's right, Billy. No, I totally agree with you. And I mean, if we look at the, Pluto at the moment being in Aquarius, and this is the good news, I guess. Like with Pluto, the transformer in this eclipse being in Aquarius, that is that humanitarian vibration. That's that unification principle, so to speak, around a collective consciousness. But not collective, like we said. It's individualized individuals coming together as a united human organization. Like it's that spirit of humanity that's really emerging now that Pluto has moved into Aquarius. And like, that if we look at it too, Pluto rules Uranus. So like, sorry, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. So the two, as I was saying before, the two major strong features of this eclipse is Pluto in Aquarius with Uranus in Taurus. So there's this Aquarian sort of revolutionary is a word associated with Aquarius, but there is this revolutionary energy here around human collective agreement, human awareness, like the principle of humanity. And I mean, you're hearing it everywhere, like it's team humanity, or human this or human that, pro humanist. Like it's humanity. The human spirit is being reignited here, and it is being reignited, by the passage of Pluto into Aquarius. But if you look at it too on another level, like we look at the actual eclipse itself, it sits at 19 degrees of Aries, right? And so when the moon and the sun come together in an eclipse, Chiron, the wounded healer, so to speak, is also directly involved in that eclipse. And Chiron's in Aries, right? So like if you look at this, very simply speaking, but Chiron represents our wounds or represents our collective injury, and in Aries it's the injury around our right to assert, or our right to speak, or our right to communicate. It's the masculine principle, so to speak, not as in men and women, but like the masculine as in that active, to take an active step, or to actively say no, or to stand in our own true self-expression. So the eclipse sits right on the wounded nature of the Aries energy in our collective. So like this eclipse is an enormously healing eclipse. Like an eclipse that really brings out what it is that is wounded in us, that stops us from speaking out, or acting in our, not speaking out as in oppositionally, because like you say, all the protests have been incredibly peaceful. They've been incredibly loving and incredibly conscious of not going into opposition. They're just purely built on value and virtue, and standing for what is of principle and what is of worth. And in a sense, that's the true nature of Aries, is like, well, here's what's of value, here's my principle. And in Aquarius too, like it's human, it's my human principle. But why, what is my wound around my ability to be heard for that, or to be seen for that, or to be able to express that? And like, so yeah, the eclipse sort of really lands on this chironic energy here, and yeah, we're going to start seeing that, that ability to really articulate where we stand, and where we, um how we kind of act in a way, like what we're willing to speak out about, and that type of thing. It's interesting. The symbol of the eclipse is this. I love it. It's this transmutation of life into love. It's overcoming crisis through compassion, and recognize the potency of life. And potentizing that into life force. So like, we get this opportunity through this eclipse to kind of, yeah, transmute through crisis. And like, let's say there's a fair bit of that going on. Like it's the ability through compassion to transmute that life force of things into love. And I know that sounds really a bit, kind of lovey-dovey, but like in a sense, it really isn't. It's realizing that there's something finer here. There's something far more ostentatious, I guess, than pure force. Like it's the act of actually refining ourselves for a change, and actually going, look, this is of more importance. This is of greater value. This is of greater significance than actual, Taurus. Taurus speaks of, in the past up until now, Taurus speaks of possession and material, and boundary and ownership and all those types of things. But but also on its highest level or its highest distillation, it's the worth or the value contained within form. So like, what's of value? Like, and why can't we stand for that? Like what's stopping us standing for that? And I think in many ways, whatever precipitates through the eclipse, we're going to be individuating along some sort of line where we get to look at what it is that has stood in our way of standing for what we see as true and of value in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's potent in that way as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well,
So
I love all that, Martin, and I personally, I'm only coming from my point of view. I don't think it is actually, all warm and fuzzy and snowballs
mm,
and unicorns, and everything else, but
yeah,
purely because it can be adapted to real life, and if we everyone's got their own practices, but with meditation and going within and releasing what no longer serves us, and looking internally, then that reflection outside of us, we've got a better or a different perspective, and from coming from a higher level that enables us, I feel, to then when the crisis does hit, that we're in that mindset or that heart space that we can not just react aggressively or negatively or anything like that. We can actually respond, take it in, go, okay, sit with that for a while, little, as long as it takes, and just respond accordingly,
yeah,
which ultimately serves our purpose a lot better, and then
yeah,
as well as the group or the
yeah. That's
globally
right.
as
I
well.
mean, there is. Well, there's a if you sort of drill into the symbolism a little bit more around the eclipse, like it's this kind of I guess there's a bit of a reap what you sow element to it, in insofar as um, yeah, like it will bring forward the ability for whatever it is you are working with or whatever you're working on to show signs of action or validation. There's very much it's a bit sort of higher sort of interventional type element to it. Like it's got this sort of way of looking at things where, because Neptune sort of forms the ascendant with the eclipse, so the, there is a bit of a, I don't know, for want of a better word, there's a bit of a divine intervention around this eclipse where we'll sort of it, it's not like we have to rely so much on what we're going to do about it, or what we're where we're going to how we're going to approach it, or what even the idea that we should even approach it at all. Like, there shouldn't be a sense of trepidation around it. It should be the idea that there really is a, a a sort of a process at work here where we are going to see the fruits of what we sow. So like, in a way, like, yeah, like, by sticking with our kind of way of being or way of seeing or our values, there is a form of validation around this. There's a kind of a, oh yeah, like here you go. This is the sign of hope. This is where things are looking good. Like, it's this idea. One of the symbols in particular is the idea of the dove coming to Noah after the storm. Like, it's sort of, it's showing that, okay, the crisis, we're in full crisis here, but like, here's a glimmer that there's land. Here's a glimmer that you're on the right track. Here's a glimmer that something good's going to come through from this. And in doing that too, I think from that point, there's this other idea in the energy of the overall eclipse of like a forming of a rallying point, so to speak, like an idea that you know, like this flag bearer idea where, they're unarmed and they don't do anything. They haven't, in a battle, so to speak. It's the one that holds the flag. So this idea that the rallying point, where if we hold within ourselves our values or our sense of unity or our what we stand for, it's that action alone that becomes the rallying point for what it is that comes out of this. So it's not like we're all going to be subject to a collective event. It's where the collective event will give us the opportunity to draw consciousness to some kind of rallying point, some kind of realization where, in our own little ways, in our own place and time, we become the central representation of what it is we stand for. And so, like, it is a call for um, us to be affirmative Mars or Aries, us to affirm what we are going to embody moving forward, what we're going to represent moving forward. So, like, yeah, it's a beginning of a very a big new cycle. And I suppose, just to jump in a little bit further ahead there, Billy, like at the same time as this new moon takes place, we are coming into this other conjunction. It's a bigger conjunction, like Jupiter and Uranus, which are slower moving planets during round about the full moon of this lunar cycle, which is interestingly a Scorpio full moon, and Scorpio tends to represent change and transformation and things. So, gosh, it could be as ominous as you want to predict. But like essentially, as the Scorpio full moon unfolds, we get this conjunction between Uranus and Neptune, and Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus. So, just to use the keywords, Uranus is change and Taurus is material world or value, and Jupiter is belief or Jupiter is expansion. And I suppose Taurus represents the material world and those types of things. So there's this sort of precipitous, sort of expansive and precipitous energy taking place in the three-dimensional world of form, or Taurus, in the earthly world. So that's at this Scorpio full moon, which is Scorpio's traditionally associated with transformation and change too. So like all the factors are there for this enormously precipitative, event that will be experienced on the level of the physical world, that is meant to Uranus change Jupiter our worldview, or lift our worldview, or bring some sort of great awareness. So there's an installation here around something that's transforming, that should lift us to a higher, more philosophical view around what is of value or what is of formed worth. So, God, your imagination could go
Well,
wild there,
it's limitless,
but
isn't it?
yeah,
And,
but
and I love
that's sort of what's coming.
I love how that fits into expansion, like you say, Martin. And we've talked about this previously, just how we can, our perspective is, with all the, even if they are significant changes pending and coming up, that they can be I feel it's not being about positive or negative, but happening for us. So there's opportunities for all of us as individuals to embrace those changes. And even if on the surface it might not be what we envisaged, or we can't even imagine some of the changes that may take place or may not, but as opposed to if we feel like all this is happening to us, and we take that low vibrational sort of perspective, and that sort of almost victim mentality at, the world's doom and gloom, so to speak, without using the word negative, even though I've just said it, that can sort of spiral you back into that, coming back to what you were saying before with the eclipses, of letting go of the past. So it's a really important time for us to self-reflect, go internally and let all that go, so then when the changes come inevitably, then we're ready for it, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and we're right to go, and we can embrace whatever changes come, knowing, not believing or hoping, knowing that it's all for our greater good as individuals and globally as well. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. Like that's the thing. If we were to assume or take the mindset that this eclipse is happening for us, not to us, then we've got an enormous opportunity here. Like, I mean, Jupiter, Uranus in Taurus is, if used for us, if we were to align our intentions and align our co-creational experience of this world to it, like this is a lightning bolt of inspiration that's going to lift our worldview beyond the physical domain that it is now, and envision a future, Uranus, that contains far more value, or far more manifest form of greater worth to us than now, at that moment. So like this is a visionary spark. This is a period of time where, not only do we have the impetus of Aries, we have the full moon following it in Scorpio to break down and release and transform all our attachments. And then on top of that, we've got this divine like spark of inspiration and validation to come in and empower us to through belief and through understanding and through pure kind of I guess intention, yeah, like start creating the world we want to be in. And I mean, if you look at the impetus of the eclipse as well, why can't we do that up until now? Or why couldn't we do that up until now? Is because somewhere out there in the Chiron in Aries world is that we don't have the right, or it's not safe to be that, or it's not safe to assert ourselves, or it's not, there's problems around us being our true, free, assertive self. And that's that wounded masculine, the wounded sort of assertiveness principle. And like that's what's here to be healed. That's what is here to be transformed. And that's what's here to be kind of, reimagined and re-envisioned and all that type of thing. But so, yeah, it's like, okay, if the collective, it's going to play out on the collective for sure. Like, I mean, whatever's going to play out is going to play out on the collective. And that's a given, because, the laws of materialism and the laws of planes and all that type of thing, it's going to play out on all these levels. But where we're not necessarily all totally enmeshed in the collective, because we can't be. We're an individual entity. We're an individual being with our own life force. So yes, we can look at the collective and go, wow, look at this manifestation on the physical realm. Look at this. But I'm in my individual spirit and in my individual form, I'm a co-creator. Like, I mean, I'm here to absolutely be in this moment and absolutely run with this event. And it's not run with the event, it's actually run with this moment, run with this creative principle. Because while there might be I don't know, a cataclysmic expansionist type sudden transformative energy go on the material world, at the same time, we're standing in that energy, which is inspirational. It contains magnitude of world expanding belief, and it contains a principle of transformational individuation. So, like, it's up to us how we use it, and how we stand in it. And yeah, you're right. Like, if we're a victim, or if we're sort of if it's happening to us, then really we're participating in a form of it that could be called the collective or whatever. It doesn't mean it's not real. It just means that, okay, what's our response to that? Where are we gonna? How are we gonna respond to that? And so, yeah, like, to put ourselves in any other position is in a way disempowering
Yes.
ourselves from our creativeness. Yeah.
And just to one extra point on that, and I agree with everything you just said. Probably important for people out there to believe and know that you're co-creating whatever existence that's coming up, and every moment. But also probably try to, and just my humble opinion, but just try not to have too much expectation. So expectation, our in many ways, our current or former way of thinking is that if we do something or we believe in something, we expect X, Y, Z or A, B, C to happen. And if it doesn't, then we're disenchanted, or we're disempowered, or we're disappointed. Remove that. Try to let that go, that expectation. So that enables us to still co-create and set intentions. But if it doesn't work out that way, knowing that has happened for the benefit of us, and then we can move forward to the next moment and to the next moment and so on. So I think that's sort of, for me anyway, just a pertinent point, just to try to let go of that expectation, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, Billy. Like, yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you. Like, the expectation is what is it? The expectation is the death of enjoyment or something. I don't know. Like, but there is a saying about expectation, and it is, if we disappointment basically arises 100% from expectation. Like, it's expectation is in a way as well disempowerment. Like, to expect something where we're putting it out there for other forces to be at work, to somehow be in charge of what it is we're trying to achieve. And like that's, I don't know, that is removing ourselves from the driver's seat of our life. Like, and it's interesting you say that too, because expectation, that is a key theme in all of this too. Like, there is this idea that of disappointment, like, well, just to take it back a step, like, while this is all going on, like, today, even, like, as we record this today, Mercury in the sky is going retrograde now today. Like, so while this eclipse is happening, and while this Uranus Jupiter conjunction is looming, and we're approaching the Scorpio full moon, Mercury's going through this phase of retrograde, which I'm sure a lot of people would have heard that a Mercury retrograde is essentially basically check your travel plans. It's when we get to review things, like, I mean, Mercury goes retrograde about 4 times a year, and Mercury rules thinking and our thoughts, our communication, and our movements, and all those types of things as well. So as this kicks off, we're in this retrograde process of reflection and re-going over and analysis and rethinking anyway. So, what becomes more pertinent here is not so much the Aries act of doing it, but it's in a way it's probably more the Aries act of separation, or removing ourselves from connection to things rather than trying to initiate stuff at this stage, because we are in the retrograde process. But one of the key features of the retrograde symbolically is that when it does finally reach its station point around the full moon and around the conjunction of the Jupiter and Saturn. So interesting how they all kind of coalesce around this point. It's the idea at the final station point of being confronted by our own disappointments, of being confronted by the expectations that we've created in things. And so it really is, I think you've nailed it, Billy. Like that in many ways it is expectation that can play a large part in our disappointment, or in anyone's disappointment. It's that removing ourselves from even the sphere of expectation, and realizing that if we put our expectations in others, or if we put our expectations in other things, or try and rely on something else or someone else to solve it or fix it or achieve it, we're really just setting ourselves up for some form of disappointment, but ultimately placing ourselves in a position of disempowerment. So, yeah, having said that, like, just be aware as well for the next, I don't know, for next at least 3 weeks, Mercury's in this retrograde phase, where it's not about starting new things. It's about really looking back into and analyzing, or going over things, finishing products. Like, on a practical level, it's where you tie off loose ends. You don't start things up. You finish off your assignments, or you finish off your landscaping, or you just get things finalized. You go and get the car serviced, or you go and take care of loose ends and tidy things up, rather than sort of continuing out there to expand. And interestingly too, that Mercury retrograde is in Aries, which is self. Like, I mean, it's having a look at ourselves. Like, who are we in relation to others? Like, it's the thing. Am I disappointed because of my expectation in others, or are they disappointed in me because I created an expectation in them that I've let them down over? Like, we've got to be sort of mindful of those exchanges there, around self too. So it is a good time to heal and look at our self as well, and how we either put that out there or don't put that out there, and why.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It's fascinating. I love how all like you've mentioned, so many different astrological events happening all simultaneously, or in that same sort of time frame. They obviously overlap and enmesh together.
Yep. It does. It speaks of a bigger. I love astrology too, because there's this bigger process at work. There's this sort of symphony. While we've got an eclipse, that might be the oboe, but meanwhile there's this violin playing over the top, and there's this sort of some drums going off in the background. Like, there's this real symphony of things happening that all kind of tie in and sort of underpin a process. And like, I just think it's fascinating how it all sort of works in together. And if you sort of synthesize all those together, like, I mean, here we are initiating this reset or reinitiation around our sense of self that takes place when Chiron, the wounded version of ourself, gets an opportunity to be looked at and healed, and that very Martian energy itself gets to be revised, while Mercury, our planet of thinking and thoughts and action and communication, goes into a process of review around self in relation to others. And like, there's just this real workings going on here of who we are in relation to others, and like, our expectations are part of it. And interesting too, though, when the Mercury retrograde starts, there's this beautiful symbol that kicks it off, and it's this final ability to see, like, to actually see finally, in the twilight, so to speak, the real forces of nature that are at work. And like, oftentimes in our material world, so to speak, and this is probably where Taurus comes in too, we get so obsessed with materiality, or we get so caught up in in the material side of life, or the hard evident side of things, but don't realize that Taurus and Capricorn and Virgo, they're the earth elements, but there's like all these other, there's like, nine other representations of three other different elements going on here. And like, so we can be transfixed on the material, but there's this need to recognize that there are these sort of, I guess, spirits, invisible forces, if you like, of nature that's at work, and they don't often take the form of sheer physicality, like sometimes it's only in times of transition or sunset and sunrise that we see this sort of magical mystery that's taking place. But like, it's really, it does it it's to open our minds up to more possibilities, to more than just the sheer three-dimensionality of life, and realize that there's far more forces at work here than just the practical, what's in front of you, what you can see, what you can believe. Like, it's in a way, it's yeah, like I've sort of jotted down, but like, it's opening our mind to the possibility of approaching life in a more holistic and intuitive manner. And like, that's what I see as an underpinning feature here, is to to become more, to bring it more in house, to bring our experience more in house. And like, that it's from that, or through that process, that we become creator, we become co-creator in it all. Like, if we're purely reacting to a physical expression of something, or if we're purely reacting to a material form, then we're denying in many ways that there was a creation behind that, or there was a process at work behind it. And it's not until we realize that process behind that we can even tune into the forces that are at work behind that process. So like, in many ways, we have to come back. And I guess this is probably where I see it. I see young children, and they've got this going on. Like, it's this childlike state of fascination, this childlike state of creation, and enjoyment, and feeling, and being present, and all those types of things that I think can elude us, to the point where we find ourselves purely reactionary to worldly events or to worldly situations, and not realize that there's 98% of life that we aren't seeing in that 2% of manifest form. So yeah, there's that, I don't know, that's going on as well, for my view of this eclipse as
Yeah.
well.
Oh, very good, very good. And I guess
Yeah.
with all the media and TV and news and everything else, it does give us. I just thought that while you just finished saying that, Martin, how it can blow our perspective outwards, possibly too much. Like you just tapped in,
Mm.
something happening on the opposite side of the world that has nothing to do with us, and
Yeah.
literally won't affect us in any way. Uh, while we're focused on that and getting angry and judgmental and everything else, we're sort of not, we're missing the opportunity to look closer to home, not just
That's it.
internally, but the people around us. Because there's a saying that everyone's a reflection, and the
Yeah.
mirror aspect. And I love I was just sort of segueing into the nodal axis we tapped in before. You were saying
Yeah.
that the north mode is sort of where we're heading towards, striving, life lessons, and your destiny, as opposed to the south node of retreating, and you're saying the north node's in Aries, which is an emphasis on ourself and our own. And correct me if I'm saying any of this
Yeah.
wrong,
No,
but
that's good. Yeah, our assertiveness, and
yeah,
yep.
and then you've got
Yep.
the Libra side, which is obviously others, and the community, and outwards of us. So reflecting on that, and so whilst we're still in that situation where we're sort of trying to improve internally, take advantage of what's around you, whether it be nature or other people that are kindly, beautifully in their way, reflecting back to us. So if we, in moments where we may be tempted to judge on someone else, or something, or some event that's happening, what emotion is that stirring? And is that gives us an opportunity to look within then and go, okay, well, thank you very much for that. Okay, I didn't realise I felt that way. And yeah,
That's it.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, Billy. And I mean, it does all go on, like you say, like whatever we see on the news, like we see it in its dramatized theatrical form. Like, say, I don't know, like, if we look at Uranus and Jupiter, for argument's sake, with what's going on overseas, like there's a religious Jupiter. Jupiter represents religion, and Taurus represents land, and Uranus represents individuality or individualization, but it also represents shock and chaos and instability and things like this. So on one level, we've got this chaotic instability around religion and land, right? But like if we look at it on another level, that's the energy, right? That's taking place over there in that form. But the same energy is resonant throughout all the spheres, and like there's many other ways to say that energy. Like Uranus is also higher inspiration and individualization. Taurus is around values. Jupiter on one hand can be judgment and dogmatism, but Jupiter on another hand can be open-mindedness and philosophy and expansion of worldview. So like, and Taurus on one hand can be territory and material possession, but on another hand, it can be self-worth and value. So like, while we're seeing these energies play out, we can participate by not necessarily buying into the judgment and the chaos and the possession and the ownership. We could buy into the philosophy and the value and the inspiration and the higher outlook and the change and the individuation. So we're co-creating in that energy. And like if you had 99% of the globe turning around, and which I can see happening, like Uranus represents the human spirit, and Taurus represents the material world. So like there's this huge emergence of a human spirit that recognizes the earth, which is another principle of Taurus, like seeing the earth in this new humanistic vibration, and rather than seeing the dogma or experiencing the dogma of belief or religion, using the power of philosophy to bring around a higher humanistic awareness of what is of value and the earth in itself. And I mean, so in a way, how we are in the energy all together. It's just how we choose to participate in it. And that's where the Mars bit comes in, is what we say no to. It's like, no, I'm not going to participate in that dense stuff anymore. I want to participate in this act here, which is in some way carrying out my individual purpose and my individual belief as a participant in humanity. And like that can look so different for everyone, and we don't have to conform to a preordained, collective understanding of what that looks like. But as long as you're doing your bit aligned with what you believe in and what you hold to be true in your belief, that doesn't harm anyone but really carries forward a higher vision or a higher purpose that you're endowed with at this time, then that's the goal. That's what we're meant to be doing. And how are we meant to be doing it? We're meant to be doing it in an Aries way. We're meant to stand in that self and feel confident in our masculine expression, like as in active expression and our assertive right to express ourselves in this world, and in the face of just keeping it equilibrium. Libra is where we're trying to get away from. Libra is all about like, in its worst expression, it's like, oh, it's okay. Whatever everyone's happy with, like I'll do that. Like Libra's really, oh, it's okay, we'll keep everyone cool. But Libra really is justice as well. So if we assert ourselves along the lines of what's fair and true and right, then our image or our equilibrium around what's true and just and fair will elevate with that. And rather than just trying to keep everyone happy, and it's not about starting an argument or anything like that. It's about actually not starting an argument. It's about actually saying no to the argument in the first place. It's saying, I'm not going to sacrifice my position here just so everyone's happy. I'm actually going to start by just living the life I want to live. And in doing so, I'm going to be the flag bearer, like we were saying before. I'm going to be the flag bearer around my particular integrity or my particular state of being, or what it is that I want to see carry out in this world. And I guess the trap is in conformity. The trap is in keeping everyone happy and keeping everyone cool. But it's realizing that the universe has a greater sense of balance. And if you say, as they say, let the cards fall where they may, and just as long as you're holding on what you can hold on to, everything will fall in the right place. As long as you're upholding your equilibrium the best you can. And that's the only way we can do that is aligning with what we value and aligning with our values. And
Because
you know,
we tend to underestimate the power of our own energies, our own internal
yep,
energy per se. And I've had multiple conversations just coincidentally in alignment with what you just said with in regards to our thoughts and our feelings, and in particular the power of the word. So and obviously that all stems from our way of thinking, our perspective, and our choice. Like I love that word. We definitely have a choice right now, and more important
yep,
now than ever to not take that Librian step where we're trying to please everybody. And I've got almost a lifetime of people pleasing, so I get all that.
yeah,
But it
totally.
doesn't
Me too.
ultimately hold you in good stead when you do lose your power, or that it disempowers you along the way. And it's
Mm.
multiple examples of that. But ultimately, when you're in that different frame of mind where your thought patterns are in a positive sense and expansion sense, then that reflects then on your feelings and how you react or not react to other people. And like you're saying, doesn't mean you have to fight or stand up or clench your fist. In fact, the power of walking away or the power of saying something loving and peaceful in that particular moment. Um, is I've seen it firsthand. You would have as well. The
Yep,
power in that is amazing. Like I worked for the police for
absolutely.
15 years, and quite often someone would be irate and under pressure and yelling and screaming, swearing, and it was so critical for us as the people on the other end of the phone, and not reacting to that and getting involved in a fight or an argument and telling them they're wrong or telling them to calm down. Heaven forbid you don't say that golden rule.
That's it.
It was actually more beneficial to everybody to remain calm, to let them speak quite often, and just sit in silence. And it doesn't mean you're agreeing with everything they're saying or condoning what they're saying, but being able to just sit with it and then reflect that back to them in a nice, calm, peaceful manner. And 99.9% of the time over 15 years I was with the police, for example, and they're pretty extreme circumstances, but
Mm.
you can
Absolutely.
absolutely use this in real life as well. 99.9% of the time that situation would deflate and diffuse it, and quite often I'd have people come out and go, "Oh, thank you very much. I'm sorry about ranting," and they'd be apologetic, which they didn't need to be, but they felt they did, because obviously, if I sat there and judged them on that moment where they're angry and swearing and that's not going to serve any purpose. As opposed to 5 minutes later, sometimes only 2 minutes later, they've got it out, they've aired it, and then you find out that they're a completely different person because of you've taken that heart space. And if we
Absolutely.
there's an opportunity there. So yeah, go Martin.
Absolutely. And would you agree, Billy, that that's held through the act of humility, or that's held, to hold that space, there is a degree of humility there. And often times when people come down after a situation like that, that humiliation feeling, I guess, it's just arriving, it's the way in which we arrive at humility. And like it's humility is really, it's a very powerful space to be in, because I guess in our humility, we have our poise, or we have our silence, or we have our position in a way. It's only through opposite, ego, if you like, or inflation, that we arrive at that opposition. But from a position of humility, where we're really not trying to prove anything or grind any axes or anything like that, it's that position where we can actually, say no, or calmly remove ourselves from the situation, or calmly, go through. And so, in a way, humility and such things like humility and gratitude and things like that are really, in a way, they're very strong positions of empowerment, or strong orientations from which we can say no. And I guess, yeah, that's the importance of having an attitude of gratitude, or having an alignment with our purpose in such a way where it's it, it's not anything other than coming from a place of humility. And like, and that's not to say we must be humiliated. It's just saying that, uh, why are we doing it? If we're doing it purely in line with value and what it is we hold of importance, that's humiliating. Like that's humbling, not humiliating, humbling. And
Humbling.
like and so and it's from that we can be calm and walk the world in a way that's non-affrontive, and we can very comfortably and safely assert ourselves and say no. It's only when we perceive that we have to be validated or have to be acknowledged or things like that, which is very much the wound of Aries. The wound of Aries is acknowledgement or recognition. And so like this eclipse brings that up. It says, why am I in opposition here? It's because I haven't been acknowledged. I haven't been, recognized. I haven't been seen. And so, if it's through humility that we see ourselves. And so self-recognition and self-value and self-nourishing and self-observation and self-fulfillment, they're ultimately the keys that take us out of confrontation. They take us away from that. And, and if we're constantly, up until now, if we're out there seeking recognition, ultimately the lack of that recognition or how that recognition is portrayed to us, which is the wound of Aries, that leads us into confrontation or aggression or attack or whatever it is, because we have to then defend our unrecognized sense of self, and so we can do all that in house with the right people and the right place and the right reflection and the right attitude. And yeah, I think that's the key,
Yeah,
those
yeah,
types of
and
things.
it's
Yeah,
with the eclipse and all the other things we've talked about. It's perfect timing for anyone. I'd invite and encourage anyone to. What would I say? Just start that daily or moment by moment practice. In peaceful and calm times, when you're by yourself or anything else. So when those moments do come up that may be triggers in past or even now, you've practiced that calmness and that humility all the way through. So it's not a big step up to then maintain that, as opposed to if you're walking around negative or pessimistic or skeptical or victim or it's happening to me, then it's a real challenge and quite difficult to then take a situation and flip that to be positive, to be your benefit. So I'd welcome, encourage,
absolutely. Yeah.
and invite anyone to out there to start just in small ways, nothing significant, but just starting to practice that attitude of gratitude, like you talked about, Martin, because
Yeah.
then that
And it
has
is
a major impact on all your other aspects of life. And let's face it, life happens, and as we've talked about it astrologically, globally, there could be some big stuff coming up, and that the potential's there. But how do we deal with that will very much reflect on the work that we've done internally.
That's it. And that's our job, really. Like that's the thing. That is the key. Like, how do we deal with that? And that's what we're here for. Like, how do we deal with it? Well, that's our job. We're here to deal with that. We're here to respond to that. And like, if we respond chaotically or disempoweredly or whatever, we're just caught up in the opposition. Like, our job is to respond to that. So, and we've got all the gear in us to respond to it. And the best place from which to respond is from a place of calm and equilibrium and humility and ultimately gratitude, which opens us up to all the possibilities. Like,
Beautiful.
and that's I think that's key.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Martin. Is there any just in sort of summary? Is there anything else that you'd like to offer today?
Oh, well, I was going to say it's all the things that we have. There's so much going on, but what I will say is just have a fabulous month, and like don't forget that it is a new beginning. It's a big one. It's a big energy this month. It's not in any way scary, because you've just got to remember that you're a co-creator in it, and you get to choose how you respond to it. And reflect. Use your time as always. It is a Mercury retrograde, so this is a reflective time. The keynote of this time is one of reflection, which is quite different to Aries. Wants to act, whereas this time we're actually reflecting on the things that make us act. And so we get to look back over that. So yeah, use this month as a means of drawing yourself ever closer to a stronger center and a stronger orientation, so that you can emerge under that conjunction transformed with the full moon, and let go of the past and come out with a new sense of self and a new orientation to your values and your beliefs. And so yeah, that's to summarize, I'd say that. And have a great one. Have a good one.
Thank you. And that makes complete sense. I love that. Yeah, just letting go of your past, and that puts us all in good stead for where we're heading. And not just for ourselves, but we talked about energy and that responsibility that we all have, that accountability that we should be taking, or that I'd invite anyone to take, is not only influencing us internally, but how does that extend that out to the people that we love and all around the world. I'm a firm believer that the energy that we permeate out, that we reflect out, has an influence all around, and collectively that compounds and makes it even stronger. So
absolutely, Billy. Absolutely. No, that's the plan. That's the plan.
Beautiful.
David, thanks for that, Billy. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Martin. Well, thank you very much, and it's been a fascinating talk. I hope everyone out there enjoys it and gets a lot out of it. And I'm enjoying these regular chats with Martin, and
Yeah, totally. Look forward to the next one, Billy. Look forward to catching up with you soon.
All right. Well, happy Easter Monday, and we'll get this out soon. And
same to you.
No worries.
Happy New Moon. Happy Eclipse, everyone. All the best.
Okay.
All the best.
No worries. Thanks, Martin.
Cheers. Thanks, mate. Bye.